Your mind is limitless. The possibilities are endless. Awaken Your Mind Magic shows you how you can dream limitlessly and live your life on a new level. Susan Kathleen speaks with ordinary people who are living extraordinary lives using the power of their mind. Abundance, prosperity, and success. There are no limits to what you can dream. Join Susan Kathleen on a journey into your dreams, making a difference and living life on your own terms. This is Awaken Your Mind Magic.
Hello and welcome everyone. My guest speaker today is Dr. Julie DuCharme from San Diego, California, the United States of America. Julie is a highly sought after keynote speaker, athlete, author, leadership consultant, and podcast host, amongst many other things. Her book, Authentically You, Empower Your Way to Success, is an honest book providing a roadmap for embracing your true self and living a more authentic life. And more recently, she's written a book called Leading by My Ponytail. That's cool. Why can't I wear pink and be the president? It was named by INC or Inc. magazine the top 60 leadership books for women. Fantastic. She is regularly called on by national media to share her advice and opinions on topics from women in leadership, businesses, and whether it is in Inc. magazine, journals, universities, or on the television. She's a powerhouse. Julie is the creator and president of Synergy Learning Institute, a technical and vocational college focused on helping military vets transition back to school and civilian life. She is the creator, founder, and CEO of Julie's Party People and JD Consulting. Last but not least, Julie is a dynamic speaker who empowers her audience. In addition to bringing her expertise and enthusiasm, Dr. Julie transforms leadership. She strengthens businesses and inspires and motivates women to thrive professionally. Welcome, Julie. It's so good to have you here on Awaken Your Mind Magic.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here. As we talked off mic, I love your story and I love what you're doing. And I feel like we're soul sisters. So this is just so much fun for me.
Thank you so much, Julie. And I do feel the same way about you. It is amazing how we can actually connect on two sides, different sides of the world, and have that interconnection as soul sisters. Julie, tell us your story and how you awakened your mind magic.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you this story. Really, this kind of transformation that happened in my life, I want to go back maybe about 7 years or a little bit more. It was actually 7 years ago that my mother passed away suddenly from a disease. And it was definitely a shocker and kind of awoken some different things in me that I hadn't really thought about before. I'd been struggling with, but you know, when you have someone important in your life that you lose, you find that it just changes things. It opens doors, it closes doors. Excuse me. It does those things. And so, when my mother passed away, you know, this was kind of something that jarred a few things for me, but I want to take one step back and go back actually about 20 years. And 20 years ago, I was entering college. I had gotten a sports scholarship, which had been my dream, because I knew that college was way too expensive for my parents to pay for. And so they had talked to me about, you know, you need to get a scholarship if you want to go. So I got one. I'd worked very hard. I was in college and I was doing my classes. And I got a paperback one day in class and I flip it over, which just tells you at this college, if you have a bad grade, they put it face down. And I flip it over and I see it's a D. And I'm shocked. And as an athlete, we have to get a certain GPA or we can't play. And so I decided, well, I'm going to make an appointment. I'm going to go see the professor and we'll get this figured out. And, I thought, I'll just figure out what I need to do. So I go to meet with the professor. I sit down, I'm ready to take notes. He looks me square in the eyes and he says, Julie, you are just not smart enough to be in college. You should drop out. And it was like this devastating moment. Here I am living my dream. And this man just looks me square in the face. And it wasn't even like, hey, you could get a tutor or let's figure out. It was like, I'm so not smart that I shouldn't even be in college. And it was a shocker. I mean, it really was. When you're 18, 19-year-olds and someone tells you just don't have what it takes, it's a lot to swallow. And especially from a big professor, you're thinking, well, they must know everything. So I love this because I called my mom, I'm crying. This is what girls do when these things happen. Mom, you said I'm not smart, and my mom goes, he's an idiot. Go get a tutor, and it was such a simple answer. I always think moms in hindsight, well, I should have thought of that. So I passed that class. No problem. I got a tutor. And I made it through college. I had a great volleyball career. We won a national title. We went undefeated in leagues. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. And I went on to play some more professional ball overseas. And in the process of that, I still had in the back of my mind, you're not smart enough. And it's funny how someone who could have cared less about me had so much power in my life and it held on to me. So, I went on, people always go, I don't know how you did all this stuff. Well, I was on this quest to prove I was smart enough. So I went on to get my master's. I went on to get my doctorate. I started teaching at the university at the age of 23. I was coaching these big teams. I was opening businesses. I was doing all these things in this quest to keep saying, well, I just need one more degree. I just need to do one more thing. I need to win one more award, and then I will be smart enough. And so it was about 10 years to the date of when that experience with that teacher happened. And I actually ran into him when I was out shopping or doing something. And he remembered me, shockingly. And, he said, hey, Julie, how are you doing? And I had like these flashback moments, right? I'm thinking of the last 10 years of what my answer to him is going to be. And I have this epiphany. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've always been smart enough. I've always been talented enough. I've always been good enough. But I had been, for years thinking I've just got to do one more thing. That's why we joke about my 8-page resume. And so I looked at him and I said, that's Dr. Julie DuCharme, and I'm doing just fine. And it was a sweet moment for me because I don't ever say, go get your vengeance or anything like that. I don't believe in that. But it was a freeing moment that was like, it was great to watch his mouth drop to the floor. It was. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. It was a great moment. My husband, as we walked off, was like, mic drop. That was awesome. And so, but I needed that moment to realize how talented I was and how worthy I was. And I always tell people, it's just amazing how powerful words are, how damaging words are, and how powerful and empowering words can be if used the right way. And it's sad that I spent 10 years letting those words damage me. And had to really run into my nemesis, if you will, to find that. Now, I always say later down the road, hindsight is 20/20. And so I could definitely probably thank him and say, hey, you were a jerk to me. But because of you being a jerk to me, I fought so hard to be better. So, that was kind of like a moment of opening for me, a moment of transformation. And then as I went on, like I mentioned earlier, my mother passed away. And, in that moment, you kind of start to realize all those kind of things. I don't know if I can describe it best. I think if you've lost someone, you'll know, just things that you see that they did for you, or things just, along the line. And so that's where I had my inspiration to write the book, Leading by My Ponytail. And, that was kind of my first starting to realize that what I was currently doing wasn't really my passion. I was doing it because that's what was supposed to show that I was smart enough. and good enough. And so I was sitting in a very big leadership position at a university, and I was working 80 hours a week, and my hair was falling out, and I was getting UTI infections, and I was not healthy. And I had this realization that I just hated my job and that I'd worked so hard to get. I'd worked so hard to get this job and prove everyone that I was smart enough and I was good enough. I was barely 30 years old. And I just remember going home to my husband and saying, I hate my job. What do you think about me leaving it? I know it has a really big salary, and we have a newborn and a 2.5-year-old. And, he thought about it for a second and he said, I don't care what you do as long as you can make money. And that went much better than I anticipated. Thankfully, my husband has always been this guy who's like, if the glass ceiling is there, he's jumping in with a sledgehammer and trying to break it with me. And so I talked to a friend. This is out of character for me. I am a calculated risk taker. So I am not the type of person that will just go on a whim. I talked to a mentor of mine. She said, hey, I can hire you on almost full time. And she said, why don't you go after your businesses, Julie? You're so good at them. You've kind of been dabbling in them. Why don't you go make those big and give yourself some freedom? And little did she know that that was probably the best advice anyone had ever given me, because it was like, oh, you really think I could do something with my companies? And it was kind of shocking, because I'd always been told women don't do business. I'd apply for a business job. They'd say the English department's down the hall. You'd be just shocked at the rude things when I'd go to an interview. Oh, we thought you were a man applying. I'm sorry. We don't hire women. And so you kind of get a stigma in your mind. Okay, well, I guess maybe I can't do business. They'd say, oh, women don't make a lot of money, so just go be an elementary teacher. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just kept getting pushed this way. And so when I finally kind of released this stereotype, this cultural norm in my head, and I said, why can't I make money? Why can't I do business? Like, what is it? I'm proven I'm smart enough. I've proven I can run universities. I can author books. Why can't I do this? Is when it just kind of the walls crumbled, because I had to realize that my worth, that I was good enough. And once again, this was a me putting up a barrier, really. And I think a lot of the barriers we have a lot of times are ourselves, and we don't even realize it, And so that's where I started transitioning into my businesses. And all the academic experience I got was a plus, though, because that experience gave me the ability to start working with other companies in a lot of different capacities. So I'm very grateful for that. And so I started building those companies. And then thus my passion for our veterans came in. I have family members who are veterans, good friends. A best friend of mine that I went to college with is a veteran. And she came to me and she said, Julie, I'm getting out of the military, and this has been the roughest year of my life. Like, there's not programs for us women veterans. And we started talking about that. And I was like, well, let's just start a technical college. I threw that out, and maybe a little hasty at first, because it's definitely a little harder than it looks. But we just said, listen, this is a passion. Let's go for it. And so as we kept building and we kept writing, and we started writing these raw, real books about our lives, not like the pretty ones about the tips, 101 tips on how to not behave like a woman in the workplace, right? Like, I was reading that book, and it was like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, I can't have pictures of my kids. I can't have a candy dish out. I can't say I'm married. And I just took that book and was like, I'm throwing it out, because I'm done with this. And I said to my friend, we just got to be honest and real. There's got to be other women who are feeling like this. And so that's how Leading by My Ponytail came out. Authentically You was also a very raw book for me to write, because I'm not a very vulnerable person, being a former professional athlete, being a woman who worked in a very male-dominated industry. I'm a very emotionally controlled person. And so writing that book it took me a good 6 to 8 months. And I always say, like, I cried through half the chapters, right? Because, you're reliving these things. And so it was all just kind of this great tumble of things that happened over the last 7 years. And so now we're here in the present. And of course, COVID has been very interesting. It has shut down several of my businesses, which definitely was like a grieving process. It was like, wow, what is happening here? I fought so hard for these businesses. They're 18 years old. How can they be shut down? But we just said, you know what, we're going to keep going. Our theme this year is rising from the ashes. And I actually 2 weeks ago decided I would have my midlife crisis early and went and got a tattoo on my wrist of a phoenix. So, you know, my husband, I was like, I've been thinking about this. And he's like, let's go. And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, okay. He took me down the shop and I said, well, we'll go for it. So I know the people online can't see it. But I sat down and got it. And, I said, all right, this is my theme. Is the Phoenix and rising from the ashes, and let's just do it. And so we are now rescheduling our She Talks tour. We are, you know, I've just talked to my team. I said, listen, you guys ready for it? And they were like, we are ready for it. And so, a lot of us have faced a lot of adversity over the last, 8 months. But I even thought, hey, let's just torture myself and start a fourth business. So I started a fourth business while we were in the middle of COVID. And so, we've been growing. But I think for me, the journey had to happen to get here. If it had been any other way, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so despite the pain and the barriers and everything, I say the journey was worth it, because I wouldn't have got here if I hadn't have started, 20 years ago with someone just telling me I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough. And so that is a little bit of my journey. There's much more of it in my book, but that's the short version of it.
Julie, thanks so much for sharing that with us. And what I am always intrigued about is how one small trigger, one tiny thing that a person can do without even thinking about it to another person, that creates that insecurity. Mm-hmm. And very often, if that person doesn't have the power within themselves to go out there and do what you've done, they go the other way and become insecure, depressed, suicidal, and all those sort of things. So this is so important to be able to get the word out there, like you do with She Talks as well, where you say, don't do the damage through thoughtless dialogue, because it creates such hurtful inner dialogue to the person that you're extending your very selfish opinion. What they don't understand as well is it is bullying.
Yes.
And that I actually take on very, very seriously. And when you talk about woman in the workplace and how you cannot do such and such a thing because you're a woman, that to me is also a very sad thing, because when the roles are reversed and we actually look at how men are out there and how they are made to think from childhood that they have to be a certain way as well, it can destroy them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So consequently what we do, especially certain generation, we go out there into the workplace, and these men have been conditioned from childhood and we have been conditioned from childhood. So where I would like the listeners to actually hear is that Dr. Julie went out there. She became determined that she was going to improve. And with all these different things she did, she is where she is now. However, she didn't have to do all these extra things, because if she'd been told by that person, look, let's make a plan, let's sort it out, she likely would have actually been able to go in to where she has this incredible limitless power of creativity to do what she's already done now. So that is a really powerful thing that you put across there. Tell us more about She Talks.
Yeah, I had, and once again, I had this philosophy of like, if you're not going to give me the opportunity, I'm going to create the opportunity for myself. And obviously I wasn't some huge celebrity, getting a TED talk is just nearly impossible. And I just thought, how do I get this message out? How do I start reaching other women? Because this is so, so important to me. And so I just really kind of had this vision. I know this might sound funny to people, but I had this vision of women coming together and telling their stories, because women are not very supportive of each other in the workplace. In fact, I had more issues with women bosses than I did with my male bosses. Once I got into the position, the male bosses were fine with me because I proved myself. But the women, it was like a nightmare. And my colleague and I kept saying, listen, we're not your competition. We want to work together, because how powerful would we be if we could just join forces? And my colleague as well was running into issues where her female bosses were so intimidated by her, they would put her in a corner and take away her work. What my colleague was trying to say was that, I want to make you look good. And so, it was such a struggle. And that's really where the passion started, is us saying, and really, I've owned an event company for 18 years, so I knew how to put events on. I started calling people and said, hey, let's get this together. And we were really blessed. A friend of my colleagues, Vernice Flygirl, the first African-American female combat pilot, who speaks at large venues all the time, donated her time and came. She's a phenomenal speaker. If you guys get a chance to hear Vernice, please look her up. She came and supported the event. We had a great big event, and then it just grew from there. And we started going to new states. We went to Zappos. We've been to Texas. I mean, we've just been everywhere. And then University of San Diego sponsored our event, which was a huge thing for us. And I think we had about 250 women there. And it's just continuing to grow. So our tour is getting ready to start back up again in March. And we're still kind of building it out, or I would give you dates and locations. But we will be doing that very soon.
That is fabulous. And the fact is, you've given people, like you say, not celebrities, but people from all walks of life, to be able to go out and have the ability to tell their story. And this is why Awaken Your Mind Magic is so important to me as well. I have a passion for people to be able to tell their story like you do, where you can get out there and really let people know that you are not a celebrity, that you are not somebody who's had a TED Talk, that you are this incredible person with an amazing story, and that then uplifts other people who are the ordinary man and woman on the street. So with She Talks, can you explain a bit more the process of being able to join you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a website, leadandempowerher.com, and there is a speaker link there, and you can apply to be a speaker. And then what we do is, once you are accepted, we actually will do a certain amount of trainings with you, similar to TED Talks, in that we get some women who are terrified to be on the stage, but they want to tell their story, and we want to give them the tools to do it. And so they give somewhere between a 15 to 20 or 25-minute talk, depending on how many women we have. And so we do all that training. When they get there, we record the video and give them an actual professional recording so that they can use that for anything future they do. And then in turn, we just ask them to promote our group. And our group is a nonprofit. So all the money that comes in, with obviously exception of like paying for locations or things like that, go to our women's veteran program called Combat Boots to Heels. And that program is free for women veterans. And we help them transition and train them back into the civilian world. They have some other struggles that some of our male veterans do not have. We do support our male veterans as well, but we see that our women are unique. And so that really fills my heart, because, we're all of us donate our time. I don't make money off of She Talks. It's purely a passion project. And we have had barrier breakers who normally cost a lot of money come in for free and say, listen, we believe in this. And so we'll a lot of times have a keynote there as well, like Vernice or like Justine Siegel, the first woman to coach men's professional baseball. And we've had many other, and their stories are tremendous and a blessing. And it also creates networking. And every time we do this, I'm building my sister community. I mean, it's just amazing. I have all these women all over the US, all over the world that I can reach out to in a heartbeat. Someone's in Canada doing this or whatever. And we can all, there's no like, I'm here and you're here, you're higher up here. I'm like, I can't get to you. Like, it's not like that. And so every time we do this, and it's great because when we need something, we can reach out to our community and say, hey, ladies, someone needs X, Y, and Z. Can anyone help? And someone's like, yes, I can jump in. So all of that really ties in together. And it's just amazing. I find, every time I hear someone's story, we can be worlds apart in what we're doing, but we can find this commonality because I'm listening to their story. I'm saying, I may not be an accountant, but what just happened to you is so resonates with me, what you're feeling. And so we've had women who have talked about everything from, rape that's happened in their life, death, traumatic events, very big transitions in their life, and really raw stuff. But they have delivered such a powerful message. And really that's for me, that's what it all comes down to, is that powerful message to help support and empower and help women transform.
You're doing an amazing job. I mean, what you've created here is an international women's circle, which is an ancient tradition. And we have, like you say, during COVID-19, we've lost so many of our old ways, and people are actually reverting back to them. I mean, you had the courage to start a business during COVID. Yay, you, sister, you go there. I'm really proud of you. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you deal with your US veterans? Do you deal with post-traumatic stress?
So, I don't want to say we specifically deal with it, but we refer them to organizations that do. For a lot of we have a lot of veterans who speak in our group, and this is very much therapy for them because when they tell their story, there are some parts that they say, I've got to think about if I can talk about this because of my PTSD. So we're very open, but the really great thing is that we have a lot of women in our group who are not veterans who have PTSD that have worked through it. And so we've been able to create this sisterhood of like, hey, listen, you don't need to be embarrassed. You don't have to be ashamed because I'm right here and I have PTSD. Because a lot of times it's very taboo, especially for women veterans, because people don't think women are veterans. They associate men with it. They don't take their PTSD seriously. And unfortunately, over the last year, we've seen some really horrible things happen to women veterans, some murders that happen. And many women are starting to speak up now. And so, so when we have someone come in, our program is very educational, but we have in place partners that can do everything from get them off the street. If they're homeless, they can get money in their account. If they, have lost a job, they can get them daycare, they can get them mental health support and, anything health support. So we work hand in hand with those groups. So we make sure that they come together and do that because we've realized in all of this, PTSD is such, it's for women in particular, it's there, but it's not talked about.
It totally isn't. It's almost a taboo because you're meant to be the woman who can have children and suffer that pain and you can do this and you can do that. So therefore you should not have this post-traumatic syndrome. Yeah. And we're human. We are all human and we all have the same pain and the same hurt.
Yeah.
So that is a wonderful thing that you are doing for thousands of people out there. Thank you so much, Julie, for that. Yeah. Julie, tell me more about your book, Authentically You. Why did you choose that title?
Well, I think I chose it because, I felt after so many years of working through and transforming that, I had finally found my authentic path. And, if we want to go back to all the way to high school, I'm not going to say the years because I don't want to date myself here, but we'll go back to high school. And, my mom used to she would be like, listen, just wear what you want and be what you want to be. So like, at this time in high school, so neon colors were popular. Now, if you go back and look at the picture, I'm like, oh my God, why did you let me wear this, Mom? But I was wearing these neon shorts, this neon pink shirt. I had a neon green visor. I think I had neon pink socks on and some white kicks on or something. And I mean, it was quite the outfit, and I loved it. I thought it was the most amazing thing I had ever bought in my life, and my mom was like, oh yeah, I love it too. Wear that, Now I definitely, there were these mean girls in school who would make fun of me all the time, for a variety of reasons. And, I remember though, my mom would just always be like, why do you care? Why do you care about them? They're not your friends. Just hang out with your friends. Just be you. If that's what you want to wear, you can wear that. I mean, she had one rule, no mini skirts, but I go back and I look at those pictures and I look at my hair. Oh God, I look at my hair. And I look at these giant bangs and all this other stuff. And, but I just think to myself, back then my mom was really trying to encourage me to just embrace who I wanted to be. But it's difficult because in high school, there's a code, right? There's the cool code. There's this is what you wear and this is how you be to be accepted. And then I got into college and it was so cool because there wasn't that there. And I just could be who I wanted to and wear what I wanted to wear. And there wasn't a mean girls group. But there was a code for women and there was a cultural norm expectation. And so I really was trying to meet that cultural norm and expectation so I fit in. So I was considered not a failure, I married later because I really didn't want to get married, at 18, 19 or 20 years old. And I wanted to travel and I wanted to do things that women just weren't doing. Young girls just weren't doing that at the time. And thankfully my parents put up with that. And I know it killed my mother because, we didn't have cell phones back then. But I was really trying to find my authentic self. I really was. And sports were definitely a part of me. Business is a part of me. Academia is a part of me. But what I didn't realize is I didn't have to be a one-trick pony, that I could do lots of things, and that I also didn't have to be stuck to just one thing that society kept telling me I had to be. And so when I finally wrote the book and had this epiphany, it was really a lot about me fighting past the cultural norms, fighting past the expectations of how I should be as a woman, and really going for what I wanted to be as a woman. So, and there are still a lot of cultural norms out there, I get a lot of times like, oh, well, you're that wild feminist. And I'm like, I don't know what wild means. I, go to bed at 9:00. I drink coffee in the morning. If that's wild, okay, So, I get doing this empowerment thing lumped me into the wild woman area, whatever. And so I'm like, whatever, yeah, we talked about me wearing a pink tutu, that's my wild side. But I really felt like through all these years, I was just trying to be myself, but I wanted to people please. And I wanted everyone to see that I had the perfect life, the perfect family, the perfect kids, the perfectly cleaned house, that I had no issues. I didn't have any depression or anxiety or fear because I was just living the cultural norm of what the model woman should look like. And so when I kind of threw out the book on the model woman and said, I'm just done doing this. Like, yes, I have laundry. Yes, my house is dirty. Yes, my kid just ripped off their diaper and peed out the door, yes, my shirt is this shirt is, God knows what on it from the day, my makeup's not on, is when I truly had a little freedom of going, is there possibly other women who feel like this? And it's funny, when I wrote this book, the feedback I got was tremendous. People were like, yes, this is me. I just needed someone else to tell me that I didn't have to be perfect, because on Facebook, everyone looks perfect. On Instagram, everyone looks perfect. Filters are great. Christmas pictures are perfect. And one of the biggest, I think, false things out there is everyone else's life is perfect but mine. So not true. But how often do we think everyone else has such a great life and mine's so messed up, but I'm just going to not let anyone know because I don't want people to think my life's not perfect. And that was really my motivation behind Authentically You. And it was really tough, to be really honest, because I really didn't want people to know that my life wasn't perfect. And my life wasn't bad, but it wasn't, it wasn't the perfect lifestyle that, we look at celebrities and see them, a size 2 and perfectly dressed and their house is all white, where like my house is not white. Like it's become an off-white, with lots of stains. And God knows that. My husband will find a chair and be like, what's this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. Just, get it cleaned. So that was kind of my motivation behind it. And it was my emotional intelligence has had to have a lot of work, because as an athlete, as a woman who worked at high level, I very much put my emotions in a box and did not deal with them. So it's been a process over the last, 7 to 10 years, as this has really helped me develop and change and really embrace it. And do I still have issues? Of course. Body issues have always been a big thing for me. I'm 6 foot tall. So I'm taller and bigger than everyone. So I'm always thinking about my weight or my looks. That's something that getting in a swimsuit is always difficult for me, even though my husband's like, you look fine, you look beautiful. I'm 43 and I still have issues with that. So if you're thinking like, oh, it's just part of life, ladies. It's just part of who we are.
I appreciate what you say there, Julie, because we tend to, especially you mentioned about social media, we tend to look at everybody else's lives, and we've been conditioned. You talk about your time frame of your neon clothes and things, which gave me a bit of a smile because I can associate with that. But what I do like to say is, we look at all of this, and from that era of neon, we were also indoctrinated through fashion magazines and how we should look there. You speak about a size 2, which is possibly a size 8 in Australian size or a size 10 in UK size. The fact is that we have all these different sizes. It's very confusing to me anyway. Yeah. But what I do know is we all think we should be looking like something else and forget about working on that inner work that you've done, that inner beauty of our soul and who we are and our truth. So I love that title. That's why I asked you about it. Talk to me about leading by my ponytail. How the heck do you do that?
Well, that was, I mentioned earlier about, and I don't want to put this all on men, because there's definitely other barriers, but I was very naive in the sense of that my parents never told me I couldn't do something. Like, they never said, Julie, you can't do that because girls don't do that. My dad was very supportive. He was an athlete. And so he was all about my sports. And, my mother was my biggest fan. And so when I went on to start going after these things, they were like, yeah, go get it. And then people were like, women don't do that. And I was like, well, who said women don't do that? And so it was a very naive entering into the world for me, because I just wanted to do it because I loved it. And so I, just wanted to be a woman too, but people wouldn't take me seriously. So you can imagine, at 23, I get a job as a professor, which is very young. And so I put on my suit, I put my hair in a bun. I got glasses to make me look older, because, nobody would take me seriously, and that subline is, why can't I wear pink and be the president? Because I just wanted to dress in a really cute outfit. I wanted some color. I wanted to be me. And I found myself dressing like the rest of the guys. If I wanted to get scheduled for classes, I had to sit in the cigar circle. And even though I didn't smoke, it was like I had to sit there. And now today, I really don't like the smell of cigars, but I had to sit with the rest of the men and talk about, they would drink scotch and, drink and have their cigars. And you're like, okay, this is odd, but I found myself trying to be one of the guys, and I would be, just laugh about lewd jokes, and they'd be like, oh, but not you, Julie, because you're one of the guys, and that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to mimic them. And so one day I just was like, I'm so done with this. I'm so throwing out, because all these books would just say like, don't be a woman. don't be a woman. Just act like the guys. And I finally one day was just like, I'm so done acting like the guys. I'm throwing it all out. And if I can't be a woman and still be good at it, then I don't want to do it. And so I just started putting on my pink scarves, putting on my sassy heels. I put candy on my desk and decorated my office. And I was like, listen, I'm good at what I do, and I can look like a woman and do it too. And definitely turned some heads at first. Definitely people were like, you're never going to get hired, Amal, because I'm wearing a pink scarf, whatever. So I just kind of said, listen, I'm going to show you guys that I deserve to be here and that I don't have to act like a dude, and smoke a cigar and drink some scotch and listen to lewd jokes about women to do it. And so that's really where that was like born out of. And it's about the tips of like, because if you go back, 20 years, the books were all like, don't be a woman. Don't act like a woman. Don't be like a woman in the workplace. Then you'll be fine. Don't have emotional intelligence, And my colleague and I were both like, you know what? We finally said, forget it. We're going to be women, lead like women, because when women lead, it's not worse. It's just different. And once again, we're breaking cultural norms. I can be a nice person and still lead. I don't have to be a jerk to you. I can build. And now today, everything's about leaders having emotional intelligence and building relationships and everything that we were kind of pioneering back then. And so one day I was sitting in a class teaching it, and we were listening to, and mind you, this was 20 something years ago, so I don't remember the times, but it was one of the presidential elections, and a woman politician was talking about something, and she started crying because she was very passionate about it. And a guy in the class that I was teaching says, see, that's why we couldn't have a woman president, because they're so emotional. They could never go to war. And I remember that moment because I was like, wow, so you think because she's crying about something that's so personal to her that she can't make a rational decision. And that's where the why can't I wear pink and be the president? Because I thought, what are we teaching? What are we teaching our youth? Women can make rational decisions, and there's nothing wrong with emotional intelligence. So that was really what it was born out of. And my colleague, who was an officer in the military, a female officer, had similar experiences. It's very different for a woman officer in the military to lead 150 men or 300 men in her regiment. And so she had some very interesting experiences because, once again, cultural norm. That's not, when you think military, do you think female leader anywhere? No, not normally. So that was really the tips about us teaching women how to embrace being a woman and leading as a woman, and also some practical tips too. I mean, obviously we say like, hey, don't show up to work, looking like really sleazy. We don't want you to do that. We want you fully covered and looking nice, but you can have a personality and so forth. So that's very much, where that was born out of, a bit out of frustration, really, of us wanting other women to just embrace who they were.
I reckon you should be wearing that pink tutu and you should be campaigning to be the new first female president of the United States. I believe you would change things hugely over there. That's what I think.
Oh, well, thank you.
And the other thing that made me have a bit of a smile when you were speaking about these men who smoke cigars and drink scotch, the little boys' circle, it made me think of Victorian times, where men withdrew to the men's area to smoke, be lewd, and also to pee in their potties that were in little cupboards that were stored in that particular room.
Oh, goodness.
And thank goodness you weren't there, because you wouldn't have been able to do that, girl.
No.
I'm going to revert back to this as well, because when you were talking about woman empowerment, the suffragettes, they fought for women's rights. They did not fight to not be a woman. And in the course of this time since then, when they chained themselves to gates and fences, they went to jail. Some of them were even hanged for their beliefs because they wanted to have equal rights. That's all they wanted. They wanted to be able to go to the workplace and do things that we all do now, and thanks to them we do. What they never said to women was to lose your femininity. They wanted us to keep that. And now we have these anarchists and these women that do certain things where they bare their breasts and throw pig's blood on men and the cops and things.
Yeah.
And that is crazy.
Yeah.
And so consequently, what they have created is this fanatical sort of thing where men do turn around and say, hell no, you girls are crazy.
Yeah.
So we do have that defining line. What I love about you, Julie, is throughout this entire interview, you've spoken about your kids, about your husband, who you obviously love dearly, and he loves you back. So I appreciate that as well, because we women must understand that we are allowed to be in love. We are allowed to have fabulous husbands. We also are allowed to have a little kid who goes and pees out the front door, and it's really not possible that that is really correct. But hey, we've all had it.
Right.
It happened to us in our lives. To be honest and authentic is very important. And to wear a pink tutu and wear pink because you're a girl is great. I have a lot of gay friends who wear pink as well. And I respect that totally as well. We all allowed to be who we want to be. As long as we are creative, beautiful, limitless, and accept the fact that we are incredible people, incredible like you are.
Thank you.
Talk to me more about being a professional athlete.
Oh gosh, feels like that was so long ago. It was my only dream when I was young. All I wanted to do was play sports. I had a very supportive family. So my dad actually built a basketball court for me and a volleyball court for me. And we lived out in the country, so we had more room. When I wasn't at school practicing, I was out on those courts practicing. I would lay in bed and be setting a ball above my head. It was all I wanted to do, because I very much wanted to get out of the little small farm town and go to the big city. That was my dream. And, because of where I was at, there was really no coaches recruiting my area. The closest club was like 50 miles away, and my parents couldn't afford to pay for that. And I don't want to say by luck, because I truly believe that things happen for a reason, but I was playing against a friend, and a coach was recruiting her, and he saw me playing. And he told her, oh man, I wish I knew that girl. And she said, oh, that's my friend. And somehow got my number and called my parents very late at night and convinced them to drive me down to San Diego for a tryout. And I ended up trying out for several other colleges, but that one was the one I loved the most. And, as I went into that, I was an underdog. I had never played club. I was purely working off of my volleyball coach had been also the football coach and the basketball coach of the school, because I went to a small school. So he didn't know much about volleyball. I was purely working out of just my athletic skill. And the first year was tough. I had to fight really, really hard. Lots of practices. And then of course, over the years, we had a fantastic team and we did really well, and we went undefeated. I don't know how many years, and won national titles, and it was fantastic. It was a great experience. And when the end of college came, I wasn't ready for it to be done. And I started just reaching out to different groups, and finally got picked up by a team and got to travel. And it was a fantastic time in my life. The team that I was traveling with, the international team, we also stopped and helped out at schools. We did programs for them. We helped underprivileged groups. So it was like a double plus for me, because I got to see the world and then also give back. And I just loved it. But I did miss my family. And so, I came back and started coaching and playing, on the side, and eventually kind of transitioned to coaching for quite a while. And I have a passion for that. I keep trying to retire, and I keep getting pulled back into it. So I've been coaching my kids' little teams. But because my kids are, my son just turned 9 and my daughter's about to turn 12, I've been trying to stay out of that so I can spend more time with them, because coaching does pull you away from the family quite a bit. But tremendous time in my life. And I always say, if you can get involved in anything, it doesn't matter whether it's the chess team, whether it's double dutch or you're playing football. I think it creates, great character building. You learn how to win and lose. Everything's not always fair. You learn teamwork, leadership, discipline. I mean, today my discipline is definitely built off of the discipline I had to put in my sports. And so I really enjoyed that. And so I just always advocate for anything that you have a passion with. I've had to have a lot of surgeries because of injuries from sports, so I don't get to play as much anymore. So now I shoot a compound bow, which I really enjoy. And I do a lot of paddleboarding and kayaking, and I stay active. But yeah, when you play as long as I did, knee surgeries, back surgeries, all that stuff came into play. So now I kind of just, direct people.
That's a very intelligent thing to do. What would your message be to people listening to this, in particular women? The mindset that you've spoken about teamwork and everything else, and very clearly with your She Talks and your Woman's Circle She Talks, as I'm thinking of it, is part of your training almost from learning teamwork. What would your advice be to people who are sitting on their butts and not moving?
Yeah. I mean, part of this I found, a way that I was able to avoid a lot of depression and also grief when I was dealing with my mother's death was actually exercise, because it creates the happy endorphins. And whether it be that you're walking, you're riding a bike, you're doing robotics, as my daughter likes to do, which is making the brain work. It just changes your mentality. It does. And I always say, you just need to get up and take a few steps. Maybe you walk out to your mailbox today, and maybe tomorrow you walk down the street. But it's definitely something that in this time of COVID, I saw it a lot. I saw a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, like massively hitting, especially a lot of women. And I was like, listen, just get yourself outside, just get yourself outside and go for a walk, make a change. But I always tell people I was a nobody in a nobody town I was the underdog. And if I can get myself out and go after that, and you have to be willing to put the work in, anyone can, because, I literally had nothing going for me except a will to want to be better and to want to be picked. And my coach saw that. He saw my raw talent. And today I look at people and I see that, I think, wow, that person has so much potential to be amazing. They just need to know that they can be amazing. And I think that's so important. And like you said, if we go back to the words, people have said horrible, mean things to me, but people have also said amazing, wonderful things to me. And that's what I hold on to. When someone tries to just take me down, and it happens all the time, I'll get some weird, nasty message and you're like, I don't get it. What's wrong with that person? I go back and I save emails that people have sent me, and I read those emails, those emails of appreciation or thank you, or this helped me so much. And that's what I cling to. And so if you're just sitting there and you're doing nothing, the first thing is, and you have to want to do this. I found I can't make anyone do anything. You have to want to make change. And if you want to make change, you just got to do it one step at a time, baby steps. My favorite movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, What About Bob? With Bill Murray, but it's a bit of a comic movie, but the whole movie, he keeps going, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps to the door, baby steps to the bus, baby steps. And of course it's meant to be funny, but it's such a true thing in life, right? Like if you went back, 20 years ago, there's certain things that I would have never been able to say or do that I can do now. So definitely, baby step your way up and get moving, even if it's not sports, you can still exercise your brain. So, in a lot of different ways.
Thank you for sharing that, Julie. And as you say, in COVID-19 right now, we have a choice. We can get sad if we've lost our job or been made redundant or lost our business, and just sit. And that's the question why I asked you, because in my coaching practice, I tell people that one of the most important things is those baby steps. Even if you just walk, like you say, to the door or to the post box or around the block, it's getting yourself out there and getting into the habit of moving. So thank you for sharing that from everybody, from this professional athlete. It's jolly good advice. Mm-hmm. Julie, we're working back into me asking you, I mean, you're such a celebrity. You've been featured in Inc. magazine, CBS, ABC, CW Fox, and so many academic journals. How is it that a person so natural, easygoing, and from a background like yours can be in these journals and be so humble? Talk to me about that.
I was raised in a great family. My grandfather immigrated here from Holland and made it through the Depression. He had a really bad stutter growing up. He was very poor, and he made a life for himself being a truck driver. And my grandmother planted an orange grove and grew it. And she, mind you, grew up in a family where her mother would drop them off at different orphanages and come back every couple of years to check on them. And she had a very rough upbringing. So did my other grandma. And so I got to learn from them about, creating businesses, being humble, really appreciating life where it's at, and that things aren't just given to you, that you do have to work really hard for them. And I definitely learned my work ethic from them and my parents as well. And, I just always feel welcome to have a seat at the table because I know that doesn't always happen. And so, my philosophy is if I can just keep giving back, for me, that's what it's all about. Because, someone asked me the other day, what is your definition of success? And I said, 20 years ago, I would have told you it was a bunch of money, making a bunch of money. But today, it's so different for me because really success is having something I'm passionate about, living it, and being able to give it back. Because in the end, money comes and goes, fame comes and goes. But building relationships, loving people, and seeing other people successful, that lasts forever for me. And so, I really learned that from my grandparents who really had nothing. And then they built a life for themselves. And I got to work with them. That my grandfather was around until he was like 92, somewhere between 1993. My grandma lived to be 88. My other grandma just passed away almost a year ago at 92, I think. They've all almost lived 100 years on this world, and they had such incredible insights. But, I just feel like, hey, if you're going to give me a seat at the table, then how can I use it to bring other women, other people to the table, and do that? So for me, that's really what my passion is. And like I said, that's evolved over time. At 18, I was like, how can I be a superstar and make a ton of money? Because that's what the world was telling me, superstar was. So it's definitely evolved over time, but that's really kind of, how I approach things.
It's interesting how genetically we become who we are from where the background of our family have come from. And when I think about that orange grove, there's a Chinese saying, man who plants trees loves people. So clearly you come from this incredible heritage of love. Julie, thank you so much for letting us know that part of your life. And by the way, everybody, again, she's so humble. She was, and I will always think will be, is the NCAA Women's Volleyball National title holder. So she didn't even touch on that either. So here we are with this amazing, incredible woman who doesn't sort of blow her own trumpet. She just is. Talk to me, Julie, about your podcast, Empowering Your Pink.
Oh, yes. So I've had the Empowering Your Pink podcast for a couple of years, and we recently switched that over. But my colleague and I, Dr. Karen Walker, started that, and it is when we wrote our book, Leading by Our Ponytail, we said, okay, pink's going to be in this book the example of women. And whenever we talk about pink, so when we say we want you to empower your pink, we want you to empower your femininity. We want you to embrace your femininity in whatever you're doing. And that could be anything. So we came up with Empower Your Pink, and we started interviewing women from across the world about their stories and how they empower their pink, how they embrace their femininity, everything from women who, work on cars and heels, to all sorts of fun stuff. So we did that for the last 3 years. We recently, my colleague, because of her military career and everything she's doing, had to focus on that. And so we switched over the podcast to the Authentically You, which broadened it a bit because, as much as we adore and love women, we were like, hey, there's men out there as well that have some pretty amazing stories, and we don't want to ignore them. And so we started to expand that and doing that. So we've got about 3 years worth of podcasts that you can definitely find on, any of the streams for Empowering Your Pink. And now we've just, like I said, over the last year, been doing the Authentically You. And my colleague does pop in every now and then. Unfortunately, with her schedule, and she's on the other side of the country from me as well, she doesn't get to hop on as much. But we hope someday to be able to bring our show back together with that. But there's some great stories on there, and we've labeled them very fun, like, Big Booty Judy, just really, our book as well, we labeled the chapters like Doing It in Heels, Carry a Big Handbag, but Speak Softly. We've got, if you look at the book, it's definitely a lot of fun we had with the chapters, and they are not politically correct at all.
Perfect. As long as it's not politically correct, I will definitely read that book with great passion. And Authentically You, everyone, I must say, I was very honored to be interviewed by Julie for her podcast, and I highly recommend you listen to it because she is such an easy interviewer as well. So I really appreciate that too. Julie, do you have any strategy sessions or any sort of giveaways for the audience that you may want to share with them as well?
Yeah, so strategy sessions, I always give free strategy sessions. I do focus a lot on business development, marketing, design, because that's a specialty of mine. Of course, I am not a therapist, but ladies, I listen well. So I always offer that to any women who are in need and try and connect them with my network. But you can go to drjulieducharme.com. If you go to the newsletter and you put your email in there, you will get a free portion of my book. And then, of course, once you're in there, we regularly do things like I have Barrier Breaker Justine Siegel's baseball cards, that we give out, and all sorts of different fun things like that. And then also you get discounts to our She Talks and all sorts of things. So once you get in the system there, that helps me, and you can follow everything we're doing, which is a lot of fun. So, and you'll definitely get like pictures of me in my tutu, and we're getting ready to do a new photo shoot session, ladies. I don't know what's going to happen, but it should be fun. I know there's like colored smoke involved. That's all I really know. So who knows what picture you may get sent to you.
I love that. You are such a sister after my own heart. We are the delightful misfits of society, and I embrace that hugely. How can the listeners, other than your website, can they get in touch with you? Obviously, I will make sure that all your links are on this interview, but let them know with your lovely voice.
Yeah, we are very active on Facebook and Instagram. So Lead and Empower Her on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find us that way. You can find me, Dr. Julie DuCharme, on Facebook, and Julie Taylor DuCharme on Instagram. And that is because there are surprisingly a lot of Dr. DuCharmes out there. So I had to differentiate my name on that. And I do sometimes get accidental emails from other people asking me like, hey, doc, are you an endocrinologist? I need help. And I'm like, nope, I can only help you with business. So Facebook, Instagram, and of course the websites Our stuff does connect to Twitter, so you can find the exact same names, Lead and Empower Her on Twitter, Julie DuCharme on Twitter as well. But I really don't do Twitter as much as Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Julie, thank you so much for being with Awaken Your Mind Magic today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. You are a gem.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Julie. Bye-bye. That's Awaken Your Mind Magic for another week. If anything you've heard today has really impacted you and you want to know more, or you would just like to connect with me, then visit my website, awakenyourmindmagic.com, and reach out for a free one-on-one discovery session with me. Silver on the outside. Silver on the outside. Gold on the inside. Silver on the outside. Gold on the inside. Tune in next week, where I'll be discussing more tools to unlock your dreams and live a limitless life that you would truly love to live. I'm Susan Kathleen, and this has been Awaken Your Mind Magic.